So, okay. Good afternoon to everyone. So let's start today's one. Madhubhashini, what's the topic today?
Choosing assessment activities. Unit 22.
Unit 22, page number 145. So let me share the screen and then we start it. I'm going to send you again the link. Okay, no, it is fine. Now it's working. So let me get my markers. Assessment we already have done in unit 18 of the module 1. Here it will be a bit in detail. So choosing assessment activities. There we talk mainly about the assessment types. Okay. Now here in different types of assessment, mainly formal and informal assessment, what type of activities we do. Those things we are going to discuss. How do we choose assessment activities? Now, when you are going to assess the student, the selection of the activities for different types of the test, that is the thing, that how to select an activity which should be appropriate for a particular age and level of the student. Assessment means collecting information about learners' performance, progress, or attitude in order to make judgment about their learning. So you highlight this. This is the definition of assessment, where we check three things: learner's performance, progress, or attitudes in order to make. Attitude is also one thing, like we don't go by checking the attitude of the student, like how is the mentality, approach, the child takes the interest in doing that or not. So that attitude counts, and you have to give feedback to the parents regarding that. That we will discuss in module 3, feedback, where you give the feedback to the management or feedback on somebody's performance or feedback for the small children to the parents. Then how you give feedback in a different way for different things. So attitude is one of that. Okay, usually we don't consider attitude. We just check the numbers. If they have got good numbers, then that's the best. Right. We may choose to assess formally through test and examinations. Examination and test, which we do in form of paper test, all that you see normally which we do, it's the formal way of assessment. Or informally, we can carry out informal assessment during a lesson by monitoring. So informal assessment is monitoring them, like listening carefully and observing learners while they are doing ordinary class activities. So informal assessment comes by observation, not properly taking the test paper. But formal is through the examination, which usually we do. Informal assessment is very less done. Usually, Madhubhashini, you people are doing that in the school? Informal assessment? No.
No, sir. Sometimes we do, sir.
Really?
Yes.
How? What kind of things you do informal
We
assessment?
discuss with the students and get their feedback, or sometimes we give certain questionnaires and get their feedback regarding the lessons.
No, that is the feedback. That when we do feedback, that is the feedback, like feedback from the students, feedback from the teacher to the student, and from the student to the teacher. And the feedback is also from student to the student. What is the one student is saying about the performance of other student. So that is three ways that we will discuss in the feedback. I'm talking about informal assessment. Informal assessment, we check their performance and we tell them it was good, it wasn't, you need to improve this area, you have to do this. So that is formally, informally we tell them. That is not in the written. Okay? So
Yes.
different tasks are done, activities are done, okay, assignments are done, which is practically they do, and there we monitor them. And then we give the assessment of it. So that is informal assessment, which doesn't come in the writing, like you put on the record the marks of the formal assessment. Right, so we are going to get into detail of that. It will be clear. To get other information about the progress of individual learners, we can carry out formal assessment, like class test. When planning assessment, we need to think first about our reasons for assessing learners. Why we want to assess? What's the reason? Okay, then we can decide when and how often to assess them and choose what methods of assessment we are going to use. How often they be assessed and which method of assessment should be there. Like there are some schools where they do weekly test. Then they do monthly test. They do midterm test. And term test is usually done in the school. So I personally know some of the school, every week they have a test. Whatever the throughout the week, 5 periods, or some classes they have 8, 10 periods, important subject. So whatever they are taught, they are tested there, okay, in the end of the week. So it depends how often they need to be tested. Right. Next one is key concepts. Unit 18, we looked at informal and formal assessment, which was in Module 1. We can summarize the difference between these two kinds of assessment under the heading of assessment task, purpose, and marking. So we are going to go through this and see it is the heading of assessment task, purpose, and marking. For example, formal assessment and informal assessment. Assessment task is test and examination, it comes in the formal way. Informal, normal classroom teaching and learning activities. Homework task. Okay, so informally, you just, when you have given some kind of activities and then you see the performance of them, their attitude is also considered there, whether they are taking interest in doing that or not, and how well they are coordinating with other students in the group work or in the pair work. So, or sometimes individual activities are given. Purpose, formal assessment to assess overall language ability, proficiency test. Overall, when we want to see how good they are at language, that is proficiency test. To assess learning at the end of a course, achievement test. To assess learning at the end of part of a course, like progress test, like the school, it is usually called term test or midterm test. Next point is to decide if learners can continue to the next level or other, for example, placement test, diagnostic test. All these we have discussed in the types of tests, Unit 18, Module 1. Informal way, feedback for the teacher. For example, to find out how successful our teaching has been. Number 2, help the teachers improve procedures or choose different materials or activities for future lessons. Feedback for learners about what they can do and what they still need to work on. So these things happens orally and during the activities. What they are doing and all that. So you just give your judgment, observation to them. Okay. Marking. Learner receive grades like pass, fail, A to F or percentage, etc. Other side, teacher keeps record of progress but does not give grades. How well they did that, it is kept informal way, but it is not considered in the grades. Learners keep records of progress. How well they perform, the teacher said it was good or not, or they have to improve some areas, all that, okay? Next page, let's see what we got. Assessment activities, comments. Now, you see here, different types of activities we do for the assessment, and they have given you like clause test. What is a clause test? Students complete a text with every ninth word and blank out. Comments, test reading comprehension and knowledge of grammar and lexis may be difficult to mark as gaps may allow more than one answer. So this type of test we do for reading comprehension, grammar check, or for the lexis. So we give clause test to them where they put the words in the gaps. Next one is gap fill. What happens in that? Students complete a text with the selected words blank out. Some words they have taken, which you have to put it there. Okay? So test knowledge of grammar. It is used for the grammar or lexis. Teacher has control over which items are tested. Marking can be difficult as gaps may allow more than one answer. Reordering jumble sentences. This is good for test grammatical knowledge, cohesion. Cohesion is dealing with the grammar structure, the language side, and awareness of collocation, objective, task type, easy to mark. Jumble word. Objective task means there is a particular answer is there. So the correct sentence is there and you have jumble up and given. So easy to mark that. And for these type of things, it is needed to be done. Sentence transformation. Okay. Complete the sentence so that it means exactly the same. One sentence is given and then they give some choice of the words. The same sentence meaning they have to make another sentence which means the same as the first one. So test knowledge of grammatical structure and the relationship between them. That is tested in it. Proofreading, students correct mistakes in text. Assess learners' awareness of error. A highly realistic task which should encourage learners to check their own writing. We can make it easier by indicating where there are errors or more difficult by asking learners to find errors themselves and then correct them. Proofreading, Madhubhashini, is it done in the school?
No, sir.
No. Sentence transformation?
Yes, we do them.
Sentence transformation, making same, giving same meaning with another word, combination of.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. Multiple choice question that you know, okay, which is given true, false one also you know, commonly done. And then information transfer from text to diagram table. This is not done, I think. Is it done?
We do, sir.
Really?
Yes.
Which school do you teach?
Sir, I am in technical colleges, so then there are different levels.
Yes, in technical colleges, it is done this one, information transfer. So from the diagram, they just put it why, okay, pie chart is there, all these. So they need to know how to put it there and how to write, explain it. But commonly in the school, it is not done. Imasha, you are teaching in a school, right?
Yes, sir.
You don't do that.
No, sir.
Yeah. So I was asking from the wrong person, Madhubhashini. Madhuvashini is teaching in the technical one. Okay, right. Matching one, it is commonly done. But you need to you have to go through this and make your notes. These ones are recommended for what type of, okay, like lexis, test lexis, other features of language and comprehension of written or spoken text. These things you people have to make notes, because examination point of view, they will test you in these areas. This type of activity is done for what, okay? Or they will come up with like teacher is doing this kind of activity. So then it is used for which one? So they will give you options. So you need to be clear about it, make your notes about it and find out and memorize that what type of activities are used for what type of language skills to test. Sequencing, text or picture, test comprehension of written spoken text, good for testing understanding and production of narrative, easy to mark. Dictation usually is done, and summary writing, that is also done. Guided writing, that is also we do in response to input text or a set of instruction. Guided, like you give some guidance to them that they have to do, keeping these other things in mind, and then let them to apply that rules and let's see how they do it. Test realistic writing communication, directed and controlled by the input text and instructions, and therefore quite easy to mark. Why? Because already you have given a criteria to them that they have to follow these things and mention in their writing. So it's easy for you to check that what they suppose, whether they have mentioned those things or not. So easy to mark in that way. So you people have to make your notes by clarifying yourself about these ones. Okay? Let's see on the next page, what are the ones remaining? Then come interview. Interviews are also there. What is it used for? To test skills of spoken interaction. Can provide direct assessment of learners' ability to take part in unplanned dialogue. Unplanned dialogue means they don't know what they will be asked about. So then there you check it that spontaneously how they respond to the questions in the spoken way. Testing, listening, turning, taking, and other interactive skills, as well as speaking in long turns. When someone speaks in conversation, this is called a turn. So how you let other people to talk, how you take the turn, okay? All these things are tested in the interview. Information gap activity. Students get missing information from a partner to complete a task. So half you give to one, another part of that given to one. So one information is with one student and the rest is other. So they have to match it with each other, talk of getting the information from each other and completing their gaps. So what does it test? Test skills of spoken interaction. Why? Because they have to speak to get the information from each other. Creates a real need for communication, may produce quite controlled language and so be easy to mark, or maybe more open-ended and therefore subjective in its marking. Subjective and objective. You remember subjective way of marking and objective way of marking?
Yes.
Madhuvashini?
Yes, sir. Objective marking, there is a particular answer. So then no choice. In subjective, the marker has, there is no particular answer. Therefore, the answer can be varied. So then marking is difficult in subjective marking.
Well done. If you don't get band 3, then it will be very bad. Okay? If you remember the definitions in that way, so you definitely have to get band 3, if not band 4. Right. So these ones you people have to write and make your notes by understanding what this activity is and what for we do it. Now we will have a kind of discussion about it, about the different activities. There are drawbacks in the activity, advantages and disadvantages, so we have to check it in that way. Every assessment activity has advantages and disadvantages. Everything, not only, there isn't anything in the world which has only advantages. Advantages and disadvantages are there. That goes side by side. For this reason, a good formal test includes a variety of assessment activities. A formal test, a standard one, it includes variety of that, not one way. For example, activities such as multiple choice or true false, which test single item. Now these ones we are testing a particular thing in the language, are easy to mark and give us clear information about specific areas of learners' language knowledge. Now these ones, it gives us very clear idea about how the student is at a particular language area. Why? Because it specifically checks particular areas. So that's like we get sure that yes, they know the use of can and can't. So we give an activity based on that, and then we make sure that yes, they are able to sense the sentence and use there it is can or can't. Right. Next one, however, such activities with a single focus. Now they are talking about, now what's the drawback in these single focus activities? Do not tell us anything about learners' ability to produce longer samples of language. It's obvious because we have focused on single area, so we don't know about the learners' larger samples, how they produce the larger text, how their performance is about the larger area. By contrast, activities such as interviews or summary writing can give us much more information about learners' language knowledge or their ability to use language. Interviews you take or summary writing, definitely when you are going to summarize a text, you have understanding of language. Okay, and if you are in an interview, so you can be asked of any question, and then you have to answer the question which already you don't know, and you have to make up your mind, your feelings about that thing, then words and sentences, and putting it in a proper way to communicate with the next person and make him understand or her understand what's your point of view. But because these activities test so many things at the same time, it may be difficult for us to focus on particular areas of learners' performance. Now you see, both ways they are comparing it. When we talk about the specific areas, activities, so it's definitely tell us about a particular area of the language which this child is good or not. But if we take it to the overall one, you know, so there is no indication from this. A child might be very good, might have taken 10 by 10 out of the yes and no answers. But then it is not the indication that this child is good at larger area producing the text, larger text in the language or other areas of the language. We have no idea by testing that particular area. Now on other side, if we want to check, give the students the activity of like interview, which covers a large area of the language, in not particular one area you're talking, or summarizing some text. In that, then you are not sure that particularly the student knows the use of do and does properly, or the student knows the use of present perfect tense properly. That thing you can't understand in that. For that you have to go control practice activities like true, false, yes and no answers, okay, to check the particular area of the language. So everything mean to say, whatever we do in the different activities, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. Is that clear, Madhuvashini? This point is clear to you people? Yes, thumbs up. Good. Right. So now we will go to the next point, and it is single focus activities. Multiple choice, true, false, single focus activities, continuing the same topic, are very practical to design and can give us reliable results. It gives us a very reliable result about the performance of the student in a particular area. We call it single focus activities, and examples are these. But they usually test knowledge about rather than use of language, highlight it. Now, single focus activities mostly give us, usually test knowledge about rather than the use. So it's definitely, you may know, okay, how to use do and doesn't in the present simple tense. The student will very much clear about it. Okay, if he, she is there, he has to use does or doesn't here. That the student may do the good. But whether the student knows practically how to use present simple, you got it? So that's the reason that the single focus activities give us the knowledge about only the particular area and one side of the language part where we are focusing. Okay, but practical part, so knowledge part, it tells us, but practically use, it doesn't give any indication. Right. And so are rather unrealistic and can have a negative effect on the way we teach. Activities that required learners to produce whole text and longer samples of spoken language, on the other hand, are far less practical to mark, and result may not be very reliable, but they enable learners to produce language which is very similar to the language they need to produce in the real world. Now, they talk like this, the same thing which we discussed in the previous paragraph. Here, a little bit extended discussion they give you, like the practical use of language and the knowledge side of the language. So single focus activities, although they give us the knowledge of the language, but it does not give us anything regarding the use of practically to them. But on the other side, the activities which are done for the practical use, like interviews or this sort of activities where the larger area of the language is involved in it, it gives them the real practice of the language which is used in the social life. But then we are not sure that particular area of the languages, how performance of the student would be. So now what's the solution for that, Madhubhashini? Madhubhashini? What is the solution if for these, what can you come out with that? One has also advantages and disadvantages, other also have advantages and disadvantages. Both are focusing on different parts of the language.
So then we have to do both type of things.
Well done. So then we need to prepare a test where both activities are tested. So we will be sure of the students' knowledge side also and the practical use of also. Is that clear? Yamasha, Yashodhara, Kaushalya? Yeah, this discussion is methodology. Methodology, you discuss the theories, approaches about the things, how we teach the things in different way. Okay, so here you people have to approach to these in a different way. You have to sit and study it leisurely and make yourself understand what's their point of view is, and write your notes in the easiest possible way. It is you can understand that. Try to make your notes in that way. Okay, just don't copy the things which are here and making notes of it. No, write your understanding. Right, so next one is single focus activities are very useful for assessing receptive skills where we want to check that learners have understood a text. Okay, now highlight this. Single focus activities are for the receptive skills. So what are the receptive skills, Madhubhashini?
Listening and reading.
Well done. Listening and reading are receptive because we are receiving it. And next one is we can best assess productive skills by extended activities. Productive skills, which is spoken and written. For that, the extended activities like summary writing, interviews, discussions, debate, these sort of things. But we don't do those kind of thing in the exam side. So exam, we can do writing skill to check their summarizing one, or interviews one, practically spoken English to check it if the spoken English exam is there in it included. Okay, so this is what is single focus and the extended activities, how they differ from each other and for what type of skills they are used. Although these are less practical to mark, they have the advantage of putting learners in situations where they have to use language in the same ways as everyday life. They are talking about the extended activities one. Okay. Now, next one is as mentioned in Unit 18, referring back to the Unit 18, when we decide between subjective and objective test types, there are advantages and disadvantages to consider. The solution is often to use both types of activity. That's what is the solution. A while ago with Madhubhashini also got the point. So Imasha, Yashodhara, you also people keep that. That's why we add different types of activity in the test to test the students' knowledge, not to one side. Okay, we need to check their knowledge of the language also, plus we need to check their practical use of that also. Next, the formal assessment activities discussed above are used to assess learners on a single occasion. Like a photograph, we can use an informal assessment activity, continuous assessment, or portfolio. All right. So formal assessment activity discussed above are used to assess learners on a single occasion. Like once we can take a test and we can like test is about 1 hour, 2 hours test is there, and in a single occasion we can check these activities which we discussed above. We can use informal assessment activity, continuous assessment, or a portfolio to assess students over time. But for the longer period of time when we want to test the student, like continuous assessment is there, like portfolio is there, right? So those comes in the informal way because time period is long, that is continuously for the whole year. Portfolio is the whole year activity. We don't do it here, but in the Western education system, it's a must. To assess students over time, more like a film, a portfolio can contain all the students' work for a period of time, or just a selection of the work. Sometimes it will also include some kind of evaluation written by the student of her own work. They evaluate themselves, how is there. So you give a criteria of evaluation with them that these are the things you need to check. Now check your work and evaluate yourself. By looking at students' portfolio, we can assess their progress over a longer period of time. Portfolios can be used both for assessment by the teacher or for self-assessment. It can be used both ways. Self-assessment by the student to assess you by giving the criteria to them, or it can be tested by the teacher, checked by the teacher also. So the teacher, when the teacher is checking, it's a very hard work. Why? Because the teacher has to check the long period, the whole year work that she or he has to check. So it takes a lot of time. But anyhow, we don't do it here. There are a number of advantages to portfolio assessment. Now, what are the advantages when we check the portfolios? Portfolios are easy to integrate into teaching and learning. For example, they contain work that learners do as part of their normal classroom program. Now, whatever the work they do in the classroom, portfolios work is based on that. It is not something different they do. So it's easy to maintain it. Portfolios are inclusive, mean they include the whole range of learners' work, not just a few tasks. Inclusive mean where you involve all the things this learner is doing in the class. Not one only, okay, writing only or speaking only. No, writing, speaking, reading, listening, all that will be involved in it, that what they do. Let's see, continue on the next page. Next point, portfolios are informative. They provide a wide range of useful information for teachers, learners, and parents, as they focus on productive and receptive skills. Productive and receptive skills, I told you, all reading, writing, listening, speaking. In the portfolio, all are there. And they show what learners can do with language in the classroom and outside the classroom, not just in test situation. So in the portfolio, all the activities a student is doing for learning and not a particular one, all are inclusive in it, okay? And it gives you the idea about the whole performance of the student. Portfolios are developmental. For example, assessment is continuous rather than being a single event. As formal test, we take a single event, 2 hours test is there and done. No, this one is going on. Continuous assessment is there in it. So they show how learning is progressing, not just what the learners can do on one particular day. Next point, portfolios can also be reflective. When the owner of the portfolio, for example, the student, writes some comments about the work which are included as part of the portfolio. So reflective mean which shows the learner's performance itself. So when they put the about their portfolio, their own assessment of their work, okay, then that show the reflection. Reflective can show the knowledge of the student, how it is. Now, portfolio can also have disadvantages. Now we talk about the advantages. As I told you, everything has advantages and disadvantages. Neither of the thing in the whole around us will be only disadvantages or only advantages. Even the human also the same thing is there. Nobody is perfect, nobody is totally imperfect. For example, the teacher may have a large amount of marking at one time and much of the marking may be quite subjective. That is what it is. One is you have to check the whole year work. Second is it is subjective. It depends on the teacher's mood even. Teacher is not in a good mood and marking somebody's portfolio may not give a good marks for that, you know. So continuous assessment, in which each piece of work that the student gives in throughout the term contributes to final mark, can overcome the problem of having lots of marking to do at one time. That's another thing. Like continuous assessment is like the whole year work is there, or the whole semester. Semester might be 6 months, semester might be 4 months or 8 months or 1 year. So checking the whole portfolio of the whole semester, it takes a lot of time, you know. So that's it about the main area. Is there any question about it? We will take a short break And after that, we will come back to continue the second part. You don't need break, but I need a break. All right? All right. This meeting is being recorded. So, oh God, what I'm saying, it is already recorded there. Fine. So we have to discuss now key concepts and the language teaching classroom. See what the points they are raising here. Now, what we talk about assessment activities, advantages, disadvantages, how we do it. So in the classroom, what are the concepts about that? One, when we use subjective tasks, such as oral interviews, letters, and essays, to get information about learners' general ability to use spoken and written language. Now, these are points which you people have to note, okay? Oral interviews, letters, essay, information, it tells us about general ability to use spoken and written language. We can help make the marking of these tests more reliable by using assessment criteria, which is in the Unit 19 we have already discussed. When we prepare a class test, it is important to test the main things we have taught. It's definitely you're going to take a test in what you have taught. You know, sometimes the question comes out of syllabus also, but when you are a class teacher, then you know what you have taught and you are going to take a test out of it. And to include a number of different tasks so that we get a good picture of our learners' strengths and weaknesses. As we discussed on the previous page, we should not stick to one method. We should include different activities in order to have a good idea about the student's performance and in sense of strength and weaknesses. For young learners, now small one, primary, preschool, we need to choose assessment tasks very carefully, making sure that the tasks are familiar and not too difficult, too abstract, or too long. The amount, now the point which we have to give, not too difficult, not too abstract, mean kind of very extended sentences are used there, okay? It should be easy to understand and not longer, short one. This is the criteria you have to keep for the young learners. The amount of type of informal assessment we do depend on a number of things. Informal assessment, it is depending on what size of the class. You have 20 students, 10 students, or 50 students. The age of learners, informal assessment is especially useful for young learners, for whom formal test tasks are often too abstract. Now, if you see some of the countries, in the primary, they have abolished the examinations, like Singapore. Last time they have abolished these ones. Why? And I think in Japan also, and the Scandinavian countries, Finland, I think, they don't test student. Finland, I think, not only for the young learners, above also. They check the student's performance, not that particular knowledge of test which we take of the book and all that. So they say to avoid it mostly in the young learners primary one. Why? Because in that way, going from the formal way of assessing them through the paper is kind of difficult task for the children. So better option is to check their performance. If that is okay, so that's age is like, below 10. So you are not going to make Socrates out of them at that age. So certain things they need to know, get familiar with the language, can express themselves and can talk about the things, okay? Can do the teamwork, activities, these. So if those things are fine, likewise some others also. So no need of putting them in the form of the paper test. But what to do? Here, it's so difficult to change the things. And that's mostly now, if you just see, there are tests for the preschool also, children are tested in the formal way. Right, the next one is language, the language knowledge, behavior, or skills we want to assess. The language knowledge, behaviors, or skills we want to assess. We have to see what we want to check in them when we want to see what type of behavior is. We don't give much importance to it, but it is very important that how the child is reacting to the learning process. What's their attitude towards it? So behavior is influenced, a very important thing, and our skills. So what we want to check there, these three things also we need to keep in mind. Frequency of formal test or examination. Formal test, how often it is done. So that also we need to know when we are going to do the informal assessment. Like it should not be kind of, okay, informal assessment is also going on and the same time formal assessment is going on. So there should be a gap in between that and need to know what's the frequency of formal assessment, and in between the informal can be conducted. Right. Next point, they say it is important in informal assessment for learners to know that we are assessing them and to know how and when we are doing it. Now, informal assessment, you have to make them aware of that I am observing for you people for this, how your performance is. So they become cautious, okay, the teacher is observing. Rather than if they don't know, they are observed, so they will be in the relaxed style, and then they are not going to put the proper performance like in the real way. They may be in taking it easy. But when you inform that you are observed in this task, so then they are very cautious about what they say and what they perform. So you have to inform them. To carry out informal assessment of productive skills in larger class, we probably need to assess small numbers of learners in different lessons. We can observe the class of particular student and record our opinions on a record sheet or fill in a checklist. We need to plan informal assessment and think about how we can organize assessment activities as part of our teaching. Now, you know, sometimes the classes are, ideal classes are 15 to 20 students. But here, if you see the example of sometimes we have 50 students, 40 students, 60, sometimes more than that. After O-level classes for the languages are held, I see there are 100 students in the class for the language class. I don't know how they manage it. So here they say to carry out informal assessment of productive skills like speaking and writing in large classes, we probably need to assess small number of learners in different lessons. So you have to, when there are large, you can't, informal assessment is in a different way compared to, like, if it is a formal assessment, okay, 100 are there, you just give a paper, no worries. But informal, you have to observe. Then you have to put them in the small portions, lessons given to them different ways. Like, okay, why? Because if you give one type of lesson, then other people can listen. So you have to give different lessons and divide them in group and do the informal assessment of it. Right. We can carry out informal assessment of receptive skills by checking learners' answers to reading and listening tasks and taking notes on their performance. So for the receptive skills where we do the listening and reading one, so there we can take notes on their performance, how they are doing the reading part or how they are doing the listening part. Only problem is a little bit in the informal way and when the number is a lot. So then you have to divide in the groups by giving them separate lessons. We can assess learners' grammatical and lexical knowledge informally by using language games or quizzes, or by monitoring practice activities and making a note of frequent errors. Now, learners' grammatical and lexical knowledge regarding the vocabulary and words and the grammar structure, when we want to assess that informally, then what we do by using language games and quizzes. We can give different quiz and games in the grammar. There are a lot of activities and quizzes in the games and the grammar to check the students' performance. So that comes in the informal way, because games and quizzes you don't use in the formal test. And lexical knowledge informally by using language games and quiz, or by monitoring practice activities and making a note of frequent errors, or like we give a practice activity group wise or team wise, and then we can monitor and note down their performance. We can then give feedback to the individuals or to the whole class, or return to the problems later in a revision lesson. And feedback can be given individually. It depends. That we will discuss in the feedback lesson, that why need to be given individual feedback, why need to be given in a group or to the whole class. There are different aspects of giving the feedback, and there are different reasons for that. That later on we will discuss in the module 3. It is feedback. Okay. Right. Next is, we may also wish to assess other things such as motivation and effort. We can do this by observation and also by talking to learners about their learning. We can discuss with them what they have learned. Then we can understand how much they can speak on that topic and discuss with us that topic which I have taught them. That way also you can observe their performance. Okay. And you can do observation by giving some activities which they do. Right. The next one is, it is important to keep record of informal assessment, especially in larger classes, so that we have the information we need to report or give feedback on our learners. The records can be quite simple, with headings, for example, for grammar, vocabulary, language skills, motivation, and general progress against, which learners name. When completed, then provide the teachers with a useful learner's profile. Right. So record we need to keep of the observation, the informally which is done. So that was it for all what we discussed about assessment activities and how we assess the students formally, informally, formal way also, what are the activities we do, and to check what type of skills we check, productive or receptive skills. Along with that, in which skills checking and what type of activities we use subjective marking, and in which objective marking. The the advantages and disadvantages. That's what is the main thing which we need to find out here and make criteria. Plus the list which is given over there, that activities, why we use it, for what type of language part check. That thing you people have to keep in mind and make your notes accordingly. Okay. Any question you want to ask about this lesson? I'm not going to do another lesson because it is a lengthy one. So I will stop next week. I will do 2 lessons together. Okay, because those are short lessons.